Healing doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It doesn't arrive in a blaze of light or make grand proclamations. It whispers. It murmurs in the space between who you were and who you're becoming. In the quiet moments when you realize something has shifted, not in your circumstances, but in you. You're here because something inside you recognizes this truth. Perhaps you've spent years trying to fix yourself, searching for the missing piece that would finally make you whole. Perhaps you've read every self-help book, attended every workshop, practiced every technique, and still felt that something was incomplete. That gnawing sense that despite all your efforts, you were still somehow fragmented. What if I told you that you were never broken to begin with? What if the healing you've been seeking isn't about becoming someone new, but about returning to someone you've always been, underneath all the layers of protection, beneath all the wounds, before the world told you who you should be? This is the radical truth at the heart of depth psychology. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This understanding changes everything. Because it means healing isn't about transcending your humanity. It's about embracing it fully. Every part, even the parts you've spent a lifetime trying to hide. What you're about to discover are 7 signs that you are healing not through self-improvement, but through integration. Not by becoming better, but by becoming whole. And if even one of these signs resonates with something deep inside you, it means you're already on this path. You're already coming home to yourself. Before we dive deeper, if this resonates with your soul's journey, please hit that like button and subscribe for more transformational content. Your support helps this message reach other souls who need to hear it. Before we explore the signs, we need to understand what integration actually means, because this word gets thrown around in wellness circles without anyone really explaining what's happening in the depths of your psyche when integration occurs. Integration is not self-improvement. It's self-reunion. It's the process of bringing the unconscious into consciousness. It's about gathering all the parts of yourself that you scattered along the way, all the pieces you abandoned because they didn't fit the image you were trying to maintain, and welcoming them back. Think about it. From the moment you were born, you learned which parts of yourself were acceptable and which were not. You learned that anger was bad, so you pushed it down. You learned that vulnerability was weakness, so you built walls. You learned that certain desires were shameful, so you pretended they didn't exist. You learned to wear masks, to perform to be who others needed you to be. And slowly, without even realizing it, you became fragmented, split into acceptable and unacceptable, light and shadow. The person you show the world and the person you hide even from yourself. The shadow, in psychological terms, contains everything you've repressed, denied, or disowned about yourself. It's not evil. It's not some demon lurking in your depths. It's simply unconscious. It's the parts of you that never got permission to exist. And here's what most people don't understand. What remains unconscious controls you. The parts you reject don't disappear. They operate from the darkness, influencing your choices, shaping your reactions, appearing in your dreams, showing up in the people who trigger you most. Integration is the courageous act of turning toward that shadow instead of running from it. It's saying, I am more than the persona I've constructed. I am not just the good, acceptable parts. I am also the angry parts, the jealous parts, the petty parts, the wounded parts. And when I can acknowledge all of it, when I can bring it into consciousness without judgment, something miraculous happens. I become whole, undivided, integrated. This process of becoming psychologically whole is called individuation. It's not about perfection, it's about completeness. It's about being able to say, this is me, all of me, and I no longer need to exile any part of myself to be worthy of love, acceptance, or peace. The persona is the mask we wear for the world. The shadow is what's behind the mask. And integration is when we no longer need the mask because we've made peace with what's behind it. when we can show up as our whole selves, contradictions and all. So when we talk about healing through integration, we're talking about a fundamentally different approach than most modern self-help offers. We're not trying to become our best selves. We're trying to become our whole selves. We're not eliminating the darkness. We're making it conscious. And in that consciousness, we find freedom. The first sign that integration is happening is subtle but profound. You begin to notice your triggers. Not just feel them, but catch yourself in the middle of being triggered and think, wait, this isn't really about them, is it? For years you've been reacting. Someone says something and rage floods your system. Someone acts a certain way and you feel that familiar tightness in your chest, that urge to defend, attack, or withdraw. It happens automatically. You're swept away by it before you even know what hit you. But something starts to shift when integration begins. You find yourself in that same triggering situation and there's a pause. A tiny space opens up between stimulus and response. And in that space, awareness enters. You notice what's happening in your body. You hear the story your mind is spinning. And instead of being completely identified with it, you can observe it. You can ask, what is this really about? What part of me is reacting so strongly? What does this remind me of? This is the beginning of recognizing projection. Projection is a psychological mechanism where we see our own unconscious material in others. We take what we can't accept in ourselves and perceive it out there in them. And we react to it out there because we can't face it in here. The person who enrages you with their selfishness might be showing you your own unmet need for self-care that you've never given yourself permission to express. The person who triggers you with their neediness might be reflecting your own disowned dependency that you buried under a mask of independence. The person whose confidence irritates you might be carrying the power you've never allowed yourself to claim. When you're deeply triggered, you're often meeting a disowned part of yourself. And integration begins when you can sit with that truth. When you can say, this anger, this fear, this shame, some of it belongs to me. Some of it is mine to explore. A woman I know spent years enraged by selfish people. Everywhere she looked, she saw people taking demanding, prioritizing themselves. And it infuriated her. She prided herself on being selfless, on always putting others first. But through the process that Carl Jung empath and personal development traditions teach us, she began to explore what was really happening. And she discovered that what she called virtue was actually self-abandonment. She had never in her entire life allowed herself to prioritize her own needs. The selfishness she saw everywhere was her own hunger for self-care projected outward onto others. When she finally acknowledged this, when she brought it into consciousness, something remarkable happened. Her rage diminished. Not because people became less selfish, but because she was no longer fighting that part of herself through them. She could finally give herself permission to have needs to take up space to say no. And the moment she did, the world looked different. The triggers lost their charge. This is what happens when you integrate instead of project. The same people, the same behaviors that once sent you into emotional spirals suddenly have less power over you. Not because you've become numb or indifferent, but because you've stopped externalizing your internal conflict. You move from blame to curiosity, from they're terrible to what does this reveal about me? And that shift, that small but seismic shift in awareness, is how you know integration is beginning. You're catching your projections, you're recognizing your triggers, and instead of being owned by them, you're learning from them. You're taking responsibility for your inner world, not in a way that blames you for everything, but in a way that empowers you. Because when you realize that your triggers are messengers pointing you toward unconscious material, you also realize that healing is possible, that you're not at the mercy of the world's behavior, that peace isn't contingent on everyone changing. It comes from you making the unconscious conscious. And slowly reaction gives way to response. Automatic gives way to conscious. You feel the trigger, you notice it, you stay present with it, and you choose how to move forward. That is integration in action. The second sign of integration is that your inner emotional world begins to expand. Where once there was only one or two dominant emotions, shame and fear, or anger and numbness, you now experience a much wider range of feelings. And more importantly, you can hold them all without fragmenting. For so long, perhaps you could only access one note. Maybe you were always angry, and beneath that anger you didn't know what else lived. Or maybe you were perpetually anxious. That anxiety colored everything. Or maybe you felt numb, disconnected, unable to feel much of anything at all. This emotional constriction happens when we repress large parts of our psyche. When we exile certain feelings because they're too dangerous, too vulnerable, too much. We end up living in a narrow band of emotional expression, and even that feels overwhelming because it's carrying the weight of everything we won't let ourselves feel. But when integration begins, something opens. You start to notice nuance. You can feel sad without depression swallowing you whole. You can feel angry without it destroying your relationships. You can experience joy mixed with grief, strength mixed with vulnerability, love mixed with fear. And instead of these contradictions tearing you apart, you realize you can hold them simultaneously. This is what wholeness feels like emotionally. Not constant happiness, not perpetual calm, but the capacity to be present with the full spectrum of human feeling without needing to shut down, numb out, or run away. The goal of psychological maturation is not to feel good all the time. That's a myth sold by a culture that fears depth. The goal is to feel real, to have access to your authentic emotional life, to be able to cry when you're sad, to feel anger when you're violated, to experience joy when it arises, to sit with fear when it's present, to allow tenderness, longing, grief, awe, all of it. Because when you can feel everything, you're no longer controlled by any single emotion. When anger was the only thing you could access, it ran your life. When fear was all you knew, it made every decision for you. But when you have emotional range, when you've integrated the parts of your psyche that hold different feelings, you gain flexibility. You gain choice. I think of a man who came to therapy able to express only anger. Anything that hurt him came out as rage. Disappointment, rage. Sadness, rage. Fear, rage. It was the only language he knew, and it cost him relationships, jobs, peace. But through the slow work of integration, he began to discover what lived beneath the anger. Profound grief, a lifetime of unprocessed loss, moments of abandonment he'd never let himself feel. As he finally gave himself permission to cry, to grieve, to be vulnerable, his anger didn't disappear. It softened. It no longer had to carry all his pain alone. It could exist alongside other emotions, and in that coexistence, he found balance. This emotional expansion is one of the clearest signs that integration is happening. You're no longer one-dimensional. You're becoming a full human being with access to the rich, complex, sometimes contradictory emotional life that you were always meant to have. Healing doesn't make you feel good all the time. It makes you capable of feeling everything without fragmenting. And that capacity, that emotional resilience born from integration, is what allows you to truly live. To be present, to connect deeply, to love without walls, to hurt without breaking, to exist fully in this world, not as a defended, constricted version of yourself, but as someone who has learned to hold it all with grace. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And part of becoming who you truly are is reclaiming your emotional depth. All of it. The light and the dark, the joy and the sorrow, the peace and the storm. When you can embrace the totality of your emotional landscape, you're no longer at war with yourself. You're finally home. The third sign of integration is perhaps one of the most liberating. You stop needing to be one thing. You realize you can be both strong and vulnerable, both confident and uncertain, both independent and deeply connected. The tyranny of either/or gives way to the wisdom of both and. For most of your life, you've probably felt pressure to choose. Are you the strong one or the sensitive one? Are you logical or emotional? Are you assertive or compassionate? Are you successful or spiritual? The world demands consistency. It wants you to fit into a box, to be predictable, to make sense. And so you split yourself. You choose one side and repress the other. You become the strong one and disown your vulnerability. You become the caretaker and deny your own needs. You become the rational thinker and cut yourself off from emotion. You become the free spirit and reject structure. And in that splitting, you lose wholeness. But integration invites you into a more mature understanding. You can hold opposites. You can contain contradictions. You can be successful in your career and still feel insecure sometimes. You can be deeply compassionate and also have firm boundaries. You can love solitude and crave connection. You can be certain about your values and humble about what you don't know. You can be healed and still have wounds. You can be wise and still be learning. The psyche naturally holds opposites, masculine and feminine energies, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow. And neurosis, psychological suffering, arises when we try to eliminate one side. When we try to be only light, only good, only strong, only right. That's not wholeness. That's fragmentation masquerading as virtue. Real integration means making peace with your contradictions. It means recognizing that you are vast enough to contain multiplicities. That being human means being complex, layered, sometimes inconsistent. And that's not a flaw. That's wholeness. I think of a therapist who struggled for years with what she called imposter syndrome. How could she help others heal when she herself still had wounds? How could she guide people through darkness when she sometimes felt lost herself? She thought she needed to be fully healed, completely whole, perfectly integrated before she could do her work with integrity. But through her own therapeutic process, she came to understand something profound. She wasn't an imposter. She was a wounded healer. And her wounds didn't disqualify her wisdom. They deepened it. Her ongoing process of integration didn't make her less capable. It made her more human, more relatable, more real. She could be both healed and healing, both teacher and student, both guide and seeker. And in accepting that paradox, she became far more effective in her work because she stopped performing perfection and started offering authenticity. This is what mature psychology looks like. Not the elimination of one side, but the integration of both. Not choosing between strength and vulnerability, but recognizing that real strength includes the courage to be vulnerable. Not splitting yourself into good parts and bad parts, but accepting that you are whole. And wholeness includes everything. When you can hold paradox, when you can embrace your contradictions, something remarkable happens. You become less rigid, less defended, less exhausted by the effort of maintaining a consistent image. You give yourself permission to be human in all its messy, beautiful, contradictory glory. You stop performing for others. You stop editing yourself to make sense to people who can only understand simplified versions of reality. You trust that the people meant for you will be able to hold your complexity. And the ones who can't, well, perhaps they're not your people. This shift from black and white thinking to holding complexity is one of the surest signs that integration is happening. You're growing up psychologically. You're moving from the immature need for everything to be clear and simple into the mature capacity to sit with ambiguity, nuance, and paradox. You're learning that wisdom isn't about having all the answers. It's about being comfortable with questions. It's about recognizing the truth is often found not in choosing one side, but in the tension between opposites. And in that tension, in that capacity to hold what seems contradictory, you find a deeper kind of peace. Not the peace of resolution, but the peace of acceptance. Not the peace of certainty, but the peace of trust. Trust that you are large enough to contain all that you are, that you don't need to fracture yourself into acceptable pieces, that your wholeness with all its contradictions is not something to fix. It's something to honor. The fourth sign of integration becomes visible in how you relate to others. When you begin integrating your shadow, when you start bringing unconscious material into awareness, your relationships naturally transform. Not because other people change, but because you do. And when you change at that fundamental level, everything about how you connect shifts. For years, perhaps, you've been caught in the same patterns, attracting the same kind of partners who hurt you in familiar ways, finding yourself in friendships that feel one-sided, engaging in dynamics where you're always the helper, the fixer, the strong one, while never being able to receive. Or perhaps you've been the one always seeking rescue, always looking for someone to complete you, to heal you, to save you from yourself. These patterns don't happen randomly. They emerge from unconscious material. We often choose relationships that allow us to project our shadow onto someone else. We're drawn to people who carry qualities we've disowned in ourselves. We create dynamics that keep us from facing what we most need to face within. The person who's always with critical partners might be avoiding their own inner critic by experiencing it through someone else. The person who attracts unavailable people might be running from their own fear of intimacy. The person who only dates people who need saving might be projecting their own need to be rescued while playing the role of savior. But when integration begins, when you start doing the inner work of reclaiming your projections, something profound shifts. You stop being triggered in the same ways. Behaviors that once felt intolerable suddenly don't have the same charge. You notice different qualities in people. You're drawn to different types of connection. And often old relationships that were built on unconscious dynamics start to feel misaligned, not because anyone did anything wrong, but because the unconscious contract has changed. You're no longer playing your part in the drama. You're no longer available for dynamics based on projection and reaction. And that can feel disorienting, even painful, but it's actually evidence of profound healing. A woman I know spent her 20s and early 30s in a series of relationships with emotionally unavailable men. Men who wouldn't commit. Men who kept her at arm's length. Men who she had to chase, convince, prove herself to. And she couldn't understand why she kept choosing them. She would tell herself, "This time will be different." But it never was. It wasn't until she began exploring the teachings that Carl Jung empath and personal development work offers that she understood what was happening beneath the surface. She realized that she herself was terrified of intimacy. That emotional unavailability wasn't something she was attracting, it was something she was unconsciously seeking. Because if they wouldn't get close, she never had to face her own fear of being truly seen, truly vulnerable, truly held. As she integrated this shadow material, as she worked through her fear of intimacy and brought it into consciousness, something astonishing happened. She stopped being attracted to unavailable men. Not because she was trying to make better choices, but because the unconscious pull simply dissolved. She started noticing men who were capable of presence, of commitment, of depth. Men who had been there all along but invisible to her because they didn't match her unconscious pattern. This is what happens when you integrate. The relationships that were based on unconscious material naturally fall away or transform, and new possibilities open up. Possibilities for connection rooted not in need, not in projection, not in old wounds seeking familiar pain, but in genuine resonance, in mutual seeing, in authentic presence. You find that you can love without losing yourself. You can be close without feeling consumed. You can be independent without feeling isolated. You can ask for what you need without feeling ashamed. You can offer support without becoming enmeshed. You can hold boundaries without building walls. And the quality of your connections deepens. Because when you're no longer projecting your shadow onto others, you can actually see them. Not as players in your unconscious drama, but as whole people with their own complexity, their own wounds, their own journey. Relationship becomes less about what you need from them and more about what you can create together. You stop trying to change people. You stop thinking you can fix them or that they can fix you. You recognize that everyone is on their own path of integration, moving at their own pace, and your job isn't to speed them up or slow them down. Your job is simply to be authentic, to honor your truth, and to let that truth guide you toward connections that truly serve your wholeness. You also start noticing how you show up differently. You're less reactive. You don't take things as personally. You can hear feedback without crumbling. You can offer honesty without cruelty. You can hold space for someone's pain without trying to rescue them from it. You can celebrate someone's joy without feeling diminished by it. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. And when you're doing the work of integration, you bring your whole self to that meeting. Not a persona, not a mask, not a performance. Your actual self. And that changes everything about how transformation happens in relationship. The relationships that remain, that evolve with you, become deeper and more nourishing. And the relationships that fall away create space for connections that truly match who you're becoming. You don't find better people. You become someone who naturally attracts and resonates with those who are also choosing wholeness over performance depth, over surface authenticity, over comfort. This is what it means to have your relationships mirror your integration. They become a reflection of your inner work. And that reflection shows you again and again that the work you're doing within is transforming everything without. The fifth sign of integration is a growing relationship with your inner wisdom. You start paying attention to dreams, bodily sensations, intuitive knowing, and symbolic messages that your unconscious sends. You develop what we might call an internal dialogue, a way of listening to yourself that goes beyond the chattering surface mind. For most of your life, you've probably lived from the neck up. Thinking, analyzing, planning, worrying. The body was just something that carried your head around. Dreams were random nonsense. Intuition was dismissed as irrational. Gut feelings were ignored in favor of logic. And in that disconnection from your deeper intelligence, you lost access to profound guidance. But there's a part of your psyche that knows things your conscious mind doesn't, that sees patterns you can't yet see, that holds wisdom you haven't yet accessed. This is what depth psychology calls the unconscious, and it speaks through symbol, through dream, through the body, through synchronicity, through that quiet knowing that arises when you're still enough to hear it. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This understanding is revolutionary because it means that what feels like destiny, like bad luck, like patterns you can't escape, is often just unconscious material running the show from the shadows. And when you learn to listen to that material, when you bring it into awareness, you reclaim your agency. You stop being controlled by forces you can't see. Integration involves developing a relationship with this deeper intelligence. It means taking your dreams seriously. When you dream of drowning, instead of dismissing it as just a random firing of neurons, you ask, what's drowning in my waking life? What am I unable to breathe through? What's pulling me under? And you listen for the answer, not with your thinking mind, but with a deeper knowing. It means paying attention to your body. When your stomach tightens during certain conversations, that's information. When your shoulders carry tension, they're holding something. When you feel suddenly exhausted around certain people, your system is telling you something. The body holds unconscious material. It remembers what the mind has forgotten. And when you learn its language, you gain access to truths your conscious mind has been defending against. It means trusting your intuition, that feeling you get about a person before you have any logical reason to feel it. That sense that you should or shouldn't do something, even when you can't explain why. That inner voice that says yes when your mind is saying no, or no when your mind is saying yes. This isn't irrationality. It's a different kind of intelligence, one that processes information holistically, that sees patterns before they're fully formed, that knows things you haven't yet thought. A man kept dreaming of drowning. Night after night, variations on the same theme. Being pulled underwater, unable to breathe, struggling to reach the surface. He mentioned it casually in therapy, as though it didn't matter. Just weird dreams. But as we explored the symbol, as we sat with what drowning might represent in his inner world, something emerged. He realized his creativity was drowning. His soul was drowning. He'd been working in corporate finance for 15 years, making good money, checking all the boxes of success, and slowly suffocating. The dream was trying to tell him what his waking mind wouldn't admit. He was dying in that life, even though from the outside, it looked like he was thriving. That dream became a catalyst for profound change. Not because he suddenly quit his job and became an artist, though eventually he did find ways to bring more creativity into his life, but because he learned to listen. He learned that his psyche was always speaking to him, showing him what needed attention, what needed integration, what was being denied or repressed. This is what happens when you start paying attention to the unconscious. You realize you're not alone in there. There's a vast intelligence trying to guide you toward wholeness, toward individuation, toward becoming who you actually are beneath all the conditioning. And as integration progresses, this relationship with your inner voice becomes more natural. You don't have to force it or make it happen. You simply become attuned. You notice the synchronicities, the meaningful coincidences that feel too perfect to be random. You pay attention to what captures your imagination, what moves you, what repels you. All of it is information. All of it is the unconscious trying to become conscious through you. You start journaling not to vent or organize your thoughts, but to dialogue with something deeper. You write a question and let an answer come from a place you can't quite locate. You draw, you move, you create, and something emerges that surprises you, that teaches you, that shows you what you didn't know you knew. This practice, this ongoing conversation with your deeper self, transforms the quality of your life. Because you're no longer making decisions from the surface. You're drawing on a wellspring of wisdom that connects you to your authentic path. You're allowing yourself to be guided, not just by what makes logical sense or what others expect, but by what feels true in the depths of your being. And that truth, that inner knowing, becomes increasingly reliable as you learn to distinguish it from fear, from conditioning, from the voices of others you've internalized. You develop discernment. You know the difference between the voice of anxiety and the voice of intuition. Between the fear that keeps you safe and the fear that keeps you small. Between the inner critic and the inner guide. When you can listen to your inner voice, when you can trust the wisdom of your body and your dreams and your deep knowing, you're no longer living life by someone else's map. You're creating your own. You're following the thread of your own becoming. And that thread leads you inevitably toward integration, toward wholeness, toward the life that is actually yours to live. Now we arrive at the heart of integration, the sign that marks the deepest level of psychological healing. You accept your shadow as part of you, not as something to eliminate, not as proof that you're broken, but as a dimension of your humanity that deserves consciousness, compassion, and integration. This is the work that most people avoid their entire lives. It's easier to project your darkness onto others. easier to perform goodness while denying your capacity for harm, easier to maintain a split between the acceptable you and the unacceptable you. But that split comes at an enormous cost. It keeps you fragmented, it keeps you exhausted, and it keeps you unconscious. The shadow contains everything you've rejected about yourself: your anger, your jealousy, your pettiness, your selfishness, your cruelty, your laziness, your manipulation, your lust, your greed. All the impulses and qualities that you learned were bad, wrong, shameful. All the parts of yourself that wouldn't fit into the image you were trying to maintain. And here's what most people misunderstand: the shadow isn't evil. It's unconscious. And what remains unconscious doesn't disappear. It doesn't shrink or weaken from being ignored. If anything, it grows stronger. It influences your behavior in ways you can't see. It emerges in moments of stress when your defenses are down. It shows up in your dreams, your projections, your sudden, irrational reactions. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. This means the more you deny it, the more power it has over you. The more you pretend you're not capable of anger, the more it erupts in destructive ways. The more you insist you're never selfish, the more you hurt people through covert self-centeredness that you can't even acknowledge. Shadow integration doesn't mean acting on dark impulses. It means becoming conscious of them. It means being able to say, yes, I felt jealous. Yes, I had a petty thought. Yes, I wanted to hurt them in that moment. Not because you're going to act on those feelings, but because acknowledging them takes away their unconscious power, brings them into the light where they can be understood, worked with, integrated. I think of a woman who built her entire identity around being nice. The nice one. The good one. The one who never got angry, never caused problems, never said no. She prided herself on this. It was her virtue, her value. But beneath that niceness, rage was accumulating. Years and years of swallowed anger, unspoken resentment, boundaries violated because she couldn't access the healthy aggression needed to protect them. And that rage didn't disappear just because she refused to acknowledge it. It came out sideways, in passive aggression, in chronic illness, in sudden explosive reactions that shocked everyone, including her. In depression that she couldn't explain because she had no conscious access to the anger feeding it. It wasn't until she began the work of shadow integration that everything shifted. Through therapy, through journaling, through giving herself permission to feel what she'd been denying, she finally met her anger. Not as a monster, but as a part of herself that had been trying to protect her all along. A part that knew when her boundaries were being violated, that had information about what she needed, that held the fire she'd been taught to extinguish. As she integrated this shadow material, as she learned to acknowledge and work with her anger consciously, she didn't become an angry person. She became whole. She could finally set boundaries without exploding. She could say no without guilt. She could recognize when someone was taking advantage of her and actually do something about it. The rage that had been unconscious and destructive became, through integration, conscious and constructive. This is what shadow work does. It doesn't make you bad. It makes you real. It gives you access to the full range of your humanity. And in that access, you find not only your darkness, but also your gold. Because the shadow doesn't just contain what's negative. It also holds all the positive qualities you've denied. Your power, your sexuality, your creativity, your ambition, your radiance. All the ways you were taught to dim your light to make others comfortable. When you integrate your shadow, you reclaim all of it. The anger that becomes healthy assertion, the selfishness that becomes necessary self-care, the pride that becomes genuine confidence, the darkness that becomes depth. You stop performing moral perfection and start living authentic integrity. And something profound happens in that shift. You become less judgmental of others, because once you've acknowledged your own capacity for darkness, you can extend more compassion to the darkness in others. You stop dividing the world into good people and bad people. You recognize that everyone is carrying shadow material. Everyone is struggling with parts of themselves they don't want to see. And that recognition creates connection instead of separation. You also become harder to manipulate. Because when you've integrated your shadow, when you know your own darkness, you can't be controlled through shame. You can't be guilted into doing things that violate your truth. You can't be gaslighted into believing you're crazy for feeling what you feel. You know yourself too well. You've looked at your darkness and survived. And in that survival, you found strength. Shadow integration is the deepest work of becoming whole. It requires tremendous courage. It means looking at parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime avoiding. It means admitting truths that feel dangerous. It means releasing the image of yourself as purely good and accepting that you, like all humans, are capable of both tremendous love and tremendous harm. But on the other side of that acceptance is freedom. Freedom from the exhausting performance of perfection. Freedom from the fear that if anyone saw the real you, they'd leave. Freedom from the constant vigilance required to keep your shadow buried. You can finally rest. You can finally be whole. Not split into acceptable and unacceptable, but integrated, complete human in the fullest sense of the word. And when you look at the world from that place of integration, everything changes. The shadow you once feared becomes the doorway to your deepest authenticity. The parts you rejected become the keys to your wholeness. And the darkness you spent so much energy running from becomes surprisingly a source of profound light, because there is no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. When you can embrace both, when you can hold the totality of who you are with compassion rather than judgment, you finally come home to yourself. And that homecoming is the truest healing available to any human being. The seventh sign of integration is perhaps the most tangible. You start feeling more alive. Energy returns, creativity flows. Vitality pulses through you in ways it hasn't in years. And this isn't because your life suddenly became easier or all your problems were solved. It's because you're no longer using massive amounts of psychic energy to repress parts of yourself. Think about how much energy it takes to keep the shadow buried, to maintain the persona, to hold up the mask, to monitor every word, every action, every feeling, to make sure nothing unacceptable leaks out, to stay hypervigilant about which parts of yourself are allowed to exist and which parts must be hidden. It's exhausting. It's like running a program in the background of your computer that drains the battery even when you're not actively using it. But when integration begins, when you start bringing unconscious material into consciousness, when you make peace with your shadow and reclaim your projections, that energy is freed up. Suddenly you have access to resources you didn't even know you had. The energy that was locked in repression becomes available for life. This manifests in countless ways. You might find yourself wanting to create again, to write, to paint, to make music, to build something with your hands. Creative impulses that have been dormant for years suddenly stir awake. Because creativity requires access to the unconscious, and when you're no longer afraid of what's down there, the channel opens. You might feel more spontaneous, more willing to play, to be silly, to do things just because they bring you joy, rather than because they serve some productive purpose. There's a lightness that emerges, not the forced lightness of toxic positivity, but the genuine lightness of someone who's no longer carrying the weight of their own self-rejection. You might notice that you have more energy for relationships, for projects, for life itself. Not because you're suddenly superhuman, but because you're not bleeding energy through the cracks of your fragmentation anymore. You're whole, or at least more whole, and wholeness is inherently more efficient than fragmentation. Color returns to life. Things that felt dull or meaningless start to shimmer with possibility again. You notice beauty. You feel moments of genuine joy, not just relief or temporary pleasure, but deep joy that rises from being aligned with your authentic self. You laugh more easily. You cry more readily. You feel more human. An artist who couldn't create for years is a perfect example. She would sit at her easel and nothing would come. The blank canvas mocked her. She convinced herself she'd lost her talent, that the well had run dry. But it wasn't talent that was missing. It was access. She'd spent so much energy managing her perfectionism, her fear of judgment, her anxiety about whether her work was good enough, that there was no room left for actual creation. Through therapeutic work exploring what Carl Jung, emph, and personal development teaches about the creative process, she began to understand what was happening. Her inner critic, a shadow element she'd never acknowledged, was running the show. And beneath that critic lived profound fear. Fear of being seen. Fear of being judged. Fear of revealing herself through her art. As she integrated these shadow elements, as she brought them into consciousness and worked with them compassionately, something remarkable happened. Creativity returned, not because she conquered her fear or eliminated her inner critic, but because she made space for them. She could create alongside the fear, not in the absence of it. She could hear her inner critic and choose not to obey it. The channel opened again because she was no longer blocking it with repression. This is what happens when integration frees up your psychic energy. You have capacity for life again. Not just survival, but actual living. Thriving even. And that doesn't mean everything is perfect or easy. It means you're present enough whole, enough to engage with what's actually here, instead of spending all your energy fighting what's inside. You notice you're more resilient. Challenges that would have flattened you before now feel manageable. Not because you've become invulnerable, but because you're not simultaneously dealing with external challenges and internal warfare. When you're integrated, when you're not at war with yourself, you have so much more capacity to meet life's difficulties. You sleep better. Your body relaxes in ways it hasn't in years. The chronic tension you carried, the physical manifestation of psychological fragmentation, begins to release. Because the body knows when integration is happening. It feels the shift from division to wholeness, and it responds with deeper rest, easier breath, less pain. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. This wisdom reminds us that your aliveness will look different from anyone else's. For some, it's creative expression. For others, it's deeper relationships. For some, it's finally pursuing the thing they've always wanted to do. For others, it's simple presence, the capacity to be here now, without constantly escaping into distraction. But whatever form it takes, you know it when you feel it. That sense of being more fully inhabited, more present in your own skin, more engaged with your actual life rather than the life you think you should be living. That's vitality. That's what becomes possible when you're no longer spending all your energy on internal division. You weren't meant to spend your life managing yourself, monitoring yourself, controlling yourself. You were meant to live, to create, to connect, to feel, to contribute, to play, to love, to be fully human in all its messy, beautiful, contradictory glory. And when integration happens, when you reclaim the energy that was locked in repression and denial, you finally have the fuel to actually live that life. Not someday, not when you're perfectly healed, but now, as you are. Whole enough, alive enough, ready enough. That is the gift of integration, not perfection, not transcendence, but aliveness. The felt sense that you are here, fully here, and that your presence matters, that your energy is yours to direct toward what truly calls you. that you have something to offer this world, not in spite of your shadow, but because you've integrated it. When you feel that vitality returning, that's how you know. You're not just healing, you're becoming whole. And wholeness, it turns out, is the most alive way to be. And then something extraordinary happens. So subtle you almost miss it. Peace begins to settle in. Not the kind of peace that comes from everything being perfect. Not the absence of challenges or the resolution of all your problems. But a deeper peace. A groundedness that exists regardless of external circumstances. A sense of okayness that doesn't depend on anything outside yourself. This is the final integration, when peace is no longer something you chase, but something you inhabit. When you realize it was never out there waiting to be found. It was always within you, obscured by the war you were waging against yourself. And when that war ends, when you finally lay down your arms and accept yourself as you are, peace is what remains. You stop needing life to look a certain way for you to feel okay. You're no longer holding your breath, waiting for everything to align perfectly, so you can finally relax. You can breathe now, right here, in the middle of the mess, in the uncertainty, in the not knowing. Because your okayness isn't contingent anymore. It's foundational. This doesn't mean you stop growing or striving or wanting things to change. It means you're no longer at war with what is. You can hold the desire for change alongside the acceptance of now. You can work towards something better while also being at peace with what's here. That's the paradox of integration. You're complete and still evolving. You're whole and still healing. You're at peace and still engaged with life's challenges. You notice that the internal chatter quiets. The constant commentary, the judging, the comparing, the worrying, it doesn't stop completely, but it loses its grip. It becomes background noise rather than the main show. And in that quiet, you can finally hear yourself. Not your conditioning, not your fear, not the voices you've internalized, but your actual self. And that voice is calm, grounded, wise. The self is our life's goal, for it is the completest expression of that fateful combination we call individuality. This is what you've been moving toward all along. Not the ego, not the persona, but the self with a capital S. The organizing principle of wholeness. The center that can hold all your contradictions, all your complexity, all your humanity without fracturing. And from that center, peace radiates. Not because you've transcended your humanity, but because you've fully embraced it. You're no longer trying to be someone else. You're no longer fighting yourself. You're simply here as you are. And that is enough. More than enough. It's everything. You realize that all the seeking, all the searching, all the endless self-improvement was just a long journey home to yourself. And now you're here. Not because you arrived at some destination, but because you stopped running. You stopped trying to escape yourself. You turned around and welcomed every part of you back. This is where integration leads. Not to perfection, not to the elimination of problems, not to constant happiness, but to peace. The deep, unshakable peace of someone who has become undivided. Someone who no longer abandons themselves. Someone who has learned that wholeness was never about becoming something more. It was always about accepting what already is. And in that acceptance, in that profound self-reunion, you discover something unexpected. You discover that you were never broken. You were fragmented, yes. You were divided. You were lost, but never broken. Because wholeness was always there, waiting beneath the layers of conditioning, beneath the wounds, beneath the defenses, waiting for you to remember. Integration is that remembering. It's the return to wholeness. It's coming home to the truth that you are already and have always been complete. And when you know that, when you feel that in your bones, peace isn't something you need to seek, it's what you are. It's what you. If you felt recognized in these words, if something inside you stirred as you listened, it's because you're already on this path. You're already in the process of integration. You're already healing, even if it doesn't feel like it. Even if it sometimes feels like you're falling apart rather than coming together. Integration isn't a destination you arrive at. It's not a box you check off your list. It's a lifelong process of becoming more conscious, more whole, more yourself. There will be setbacks. There will be moments when you fall back into old patterns, when you fragment again, when the shadow rears up and you forget everything you've learned. That's not failure. That's being human. That's the spiral nature of growth. But each time you return to yourself, each time you catch a projection, each time you bring something unconscious into awareness, you're deepening the integration. You're strengthening your capacity to be whole. You're proving to yourself that you can be trusted with your own complexity. The 7 signs we've explored are not a checklist. They're invitations. They're ways of recognizing that something is shifting in your depths, even when the surface looks unchanged. They're reminders that healing happens in the invisible places, first in the psyche, in the soul, before it ever becomes visible in your external life. You're not here by accident. The fact that these words found you means something. It means you're ready for this depth, ready for this level of truth, ready to stop performing and start integrating. And that readiness is sacred. It's the psyche's way of saying it's time. Time to come home. Time to be whole. Time to stop running from yourself and start running toward yourself with open arms. This work isn't easy. It requires courage to look at your shadow. It requires humility to withdraw your projections. It requires patience to let integration happen at its own pace. But it's the most important work you'll ever do. Because everything else in your life, every relationship, every creation, every contribution flows from this foundation of wholeness. You don't have to do this alone. There is a community of people walking this path, choosing depth over surface, choosing integration over fragmentation, choosing authenticity over performance. And in that choosing, we find each other. We recognize each other. We support each other. So if this resonated, share it with someone who might need these words. Someone who's tired of self-improvement and ready for self-acceptance. Someone who's been fragmented and is ready to become whole. Someone who thinks they're broken and needs to hear that they never were. And keep going. Keep doing the work. Keep showing up for yourself with compassion. Keep making the unconscious conscious. Keep integrating. Keep becoming, not because you're not enough as you are, but because becoming fully yourself is the greatest gift you can offer this world. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And you're doing it right now, in this moment, by being willing to look, to feel, to integrate, to heal. You're doing the work. And that work, that sacred work of becoming whole, is changing everything. Not just for you, but for everyone you touch. Because when one person heals, when one person integrates, when one person becomes whole, it ripples out. It gives permission. It shows others what's possible. It lights a path through the darkness. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. Thank you for choosing wholeness. Your healing matters. Your integration matters. You matter, exactly as you are. Shadow and light, broken and whole, human and becoming. Welcome home.